As you all know, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned the constitutional right to abortion in 2022. Even before that, the state of Texas had approved a 6-week abortion ban, with no exceptions for rape or incest or fetal anomalies. It became one of the most restrictive bans in the country and made pro-choice advocates and health providers fear for pregnant women in Texas. In 2024, the Dallas Morning News began investigating whether there had been consequences to the state ban. They were inspired, in part, by investigative reporter Lauren Caruba, who was then pregnant with her first child and anxious about potential complications. The reporting team grew to include Marin and several others, and the project ultimately took a year and a half. Reporters collected and analyzed autopsies, built a database of maternal deaths, and interviewed dozens of medical professionals and experts. You can imagine, I'm sure, how difficult it is to report on a topic like abortion, which is always controversial, but then imagine trying to develop sources and win trust in a state with such a rigid law. Doctors and hospitals in some cases were so leery of breaking that law that they sometimes prioritized protecting themselves over protecting their patients. This series of stories brought to light the fatal consequences for women in Texas. Even as it was published, the state was trying to clarify its position to give doctors back some autonomy to do what was best for their patients without fear of criminal consequences. Still, as the series outlined, many doctors chose the path of least resistance and moved to other states. This leaves Texas in an even more difficult position, with fewer obstetric experts and fewer opportunities for those who stay to grow more competent in the field. It creates an important question for those who want to raise families in the state. Do you take the chance? As judges this year, we were so heartened to see such a strong field of finalists in this category, which featured investigative reporting on topics like police misconduct, safety failures for American workers, and the myriad of problems created by federal action on immigrants, government employees, and industry regulations. Every one of the projects demonstrated the importance of journalism to hold power to account and to protect those who are powerless to make a difference individually. We applaud the Dallas Morning News for its commitment, in this case, for the patience and the prowess to illustrate the painful and important stakes for those who live in Texas. Please join me in congratulating Lauren Caruba, Marin and the rest of the team from the Dallas Morning News.
Thank you so much for this enormous honor. It is such a privilege to be here tonight. I was 5 months pregnant with my first child when the idea for this project formed. It was early 2024, and Texas had been under a strict abortion ban for more than 2 years, longer than the rest of the country. There were no exceptions for rape, incest, or fetal anomalies. The health care available to women in Texas had dramatically changed. Court challenges had failed. As a pregnant patient myself and as a medical reporter, I didn't know what might happen to me should something go wrong in my own pregnancy. I wanted to find out.
As the healthcare reporter at the Dallas Morning News, doctors I regularly turned to as sources lamented just how scared they were to provide care that, only a year prior, was considered routine. They were just as scared to speak publicly about how the bans had upended their professional and personal lives. Over the span of a year and a half, Lauren and I interviewed nearly 50 Texas doctors. At least 10 physicians and medical trainees we spoke with altered their careers to avoid practicing under Texas's strict abortion bans. OBGYNs Dr. Andrea Palmer and Dr. Neha Ali both left Texas because they felt they couldn't safely practice medicine under the laws. Dr. Palmer informed us she was moving shortly before we published. Doctors Jack Hale and Olivia Rouse, a married couple living outside of Boston, abandoned long-held plans to return to Hale's hometown of Austin after Rouse suffered complications during her own pregnancy. Hale, an obstetric anesthesiologist, and Rouse, an internist, were heartbroken, but they were unwilling to grow their family in Texas. It wasn't easy getting sources to trust us for this story. Doctors feared repercussions from their institutions. Patients were traumatized and scared. Most had lost pregnancies or had self-managed abortions. That's how we landed on the title of this project. The standard of care had become a standard of fear.
We spoke with more than 100 people for this series, so it's impossible to highlight everyone here. But I do want to share something about one woman who we interviewed who endured unfathomable loss. Her name is Holly Cunningham. You saw her in the video. She was the blonde woman. In 2023, against all odds, she received the same rare fetal diagnosis in 2 different pregnancies, anencephaly, where the baby's brain and skull fail to properly form. It is always fatal. Twice, Holly left Texas to terminate those pregnancies, saying goodbye to daughters that she desperately wanted. Since publication of the series, Holly has gone on to have a healthy baby girl. Last month, we wrote a follow-up story about how difficult that pregnancy was for her. Holly was drowning in anxiety up until the moment that she gave birth, and that's because she was acutely aware that these laws still did not have provisions for severe fetal diagnoses. What had happened to her previously could happen again. Holly told me that for so long, the joy of pregnancy had been stolen from her. As I held her baby at her home on a recent visit, I could tell that she feels that joy now. But Holly expects this to be her last baby. She cannot endure another pregnancy in Texas.
Thank you.